the Biden administration just put the entire Chinese economy, the CCP's entire military capabilities, really, they put a big doomsday clock on it. They just killed the future of the CCP. They killed it. And it's going to force the CCP now to do something to try to save its life. The Chinese military, the Chinese high-tech economy, the Chinese AI systems, the entire China 2030 agenda, all of that just died within the last month or so. Let me explain. The CCP had a program called China 2025, and they actually disappeared that program because it was so controversial abroad. What China 2025 laid out was the CCP's entire economic ambition, with the openly stated intent of surpassing the United States. And it was all built on high technology. For example, artificial intelligence, new materials like graphene and so on, different next generation technologies. They've been on this for a very long time. They have another program called Project 863, right? Project 863. And Project 863 was basically the first-ish generation of the China 2025 agenda. They now have China 2030. All of these have the same basic idea: surpass you at the turning point, right? Surpass you at the turning point. They've been working for decades to build the next generation technologies to set up everything to make sure that when there's a global shift in technology, the CCP is at the front and they are the world leaders on it. Currently, the CCP is positioned, they're very close to it, to become the world leaders on AI, to become the world leaders on advanced medical development, because they don't have laws restricting any of the crazy stuff that other countries know is immoral and they won't allow, like gain-of-function research, for example. There are things you can do in China that no other country can do because other countries would consider it unethical or just absolutely immoral. The CCP will allow it, which is why a lot of different people go there for this type of stuff. They're the world leaders in organ harvesting, or organ transplants, which is tied to organ harvesting, because they can kill people on demand and steal their organs. And so they have a lot of experience with it. Just like the Nazi doctors were doing human experiments, and frankly, a lot of our modern medical information is heavily pulled from human experimentation programs of the Nazis. That being said, the CCP has spent literally decades preparing for this very moment, but they did not anticipate one crucial element. They do not have the capability technologically to develop the core technologies that enable this system. One of the enabling factors, the thing that makes all of this possible, is those dang chips. Those chips. And the CCP, for the life of it, cannot develop those chips. They've tried very hard. Actually, I can tell you a very funny story of just illustrating why they cannot build them. The CCP has tried pouring money into this. They've poured money into programs to become the world chip manufacturers, to build the same thing the US and other countries and even Taiwan can build. And even, in fact, the Taiwanese systems have been heavily subsidized by the United States, and even their own capabilities to develop these high-tech chips are very much reliant on the United States, as the same in South Korea to some extent. In other words, the United States has allowed these companies to come up. The United States has assisted these companies to come up, and the United States is the world power directing the development mostly of these high-tech chips. The CCP has wanted very badly to take that away. They've wanted very badly to be able to compete in that space because they understand their entire little house of cards is resting on a very small foundation. And if you pull out that very small foundation, the entire thing just comes toppling down. And by the way, that is what we're watching happen as we speak right now. But let me tell you a story. People may wonder, well, why can't China just build these chips themselves? First of all, the CCP cannot build a lot of current generation technologies. Militarily, for example, they import their missile defense systems and their fighter jet engines from Russia. Their military technology is less advanced than Russia. They're not even at Russia capability in terms of, where they're at technologically. They import a lot of it. They depend heavily on imports for the advanced components that they then use to build their other, newer technologies. They need to import them, and they've used imports and trade deals and so on as a way basically to build a current generation, military, current generation technology, current generation manufacturing capabilities, and so on. All of that is an illusion. It's reliant on other countries. They can't do it. They're too corrupt. There's too much corruption. There's no protection on intellectual property. There's no incentive to innovate, and there's no reason for anybody to, working under the state-run companies to actually do their jobs well, because you get nothing out of it. They don't have a real free market, right? That's where they're at. And let me show you now a bit deeper on what this actually means in practice. Defense News had this story in January, and keep in mind there's been several updates on this since, right, which we've just been discussing. It says how Biden's microchip ban is curbing China's AI weapons efforts. This is Defense News. It says President Joe Biden's motorcade pulled up to a 40-acre construction site dotted with some 24 red, blue, and gold cranes. An American flag hung from one of the site's buildings alongside a banner that read, "A future made in America, Phoenix, Arizona." The site will feature a new facility of the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC. It says the site will feature a new facility of the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. Biden had arrived to tout the company's newly announced $40 billion investment in U.S. microelectronics manufacturing following the January enactment of the CHIPS Act. Remember that name because it'll go down in history, which included $52 billion in subsidies and tax incentives for businesses that produce semiconductors within the country, in the United States, made in America. And Biden said, "American manufacturing is back, folks." It's debatable, but I would applaud him on this. I think this is actually very good what he did with this. But let's go further into it. It says the president's speech in December focused on creating new jobs in the swing state, Arizona, the bread and butter of economic potential victories. But he also announced a game changer, and that game changer is this. In 2026, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company would begin building the world's most advanced microelectronics in Arizona, 3-nanometer chips. That's the next generation, and that is what has been stolen from the CCP's entire future and everything they hoped for. Further, when it states the Commerce Department's restrictions put the U.S. on the offensive against China's ability to produce the advanced microelectronics needed to meet its long-term military modernization goals. The CCP now can no longer build a modern military. That's what this means. The export controls prohibit businesses such as TSMC from continuing to produce these sophisticated microchips in China, even as the Taiwanese company begins manufacturing its advanced semiconductors in Arizona. And further, it states several days after the regulations were unveiled, TSMC obtained a 1-year U.S. waiver to continue operating its semiconductor site in Nanjing, China, with one condition. Its China-based operations must remain limited to producing lower-end semiconductor and not the advanced chips integral to China's AI development, which are subject to the new export controls in the United States. In other words, the CCP is going to be able to get some chips, but these are not going to be modern chips. These are not going to be anything advanced. These are not going to be anything of a threat to the United States or any other country. They're going to be generations behind. And I believe even those have now been cut off, because this article is from January. Even those have now been cut off to a large extent. And so they just killed it. And as I noted, it says this: China has set 2030 as its target date to become the global leader in artificial intelligence, with a subsequent goal of putting the People's Liberation Army on par with the U.S. military by 2035, a goal that export controls intend to complicate. You get that, folks? Agenda 2030, and not to mention China 2049, their goal to basically become the global hegemon. The entire CCP ambition, the thing they have worked at for decades, just got taken away from them. All of this just got destroyed.